A liquidator, I think someone drinks a lot. That's not us. Curator, no. A receiver of any kind. Now that's really broad. Have you received anything throughout your life for the taxpayer? Okay. Maybe we fit into here. A trustee, an heir, an administrator, an executor, a committee, or any other like person. Here's an example how the word person doesn't carry the definition in, because they go any other like person. The like makes it any of this list. Anything similar to that. Administrating, winding up, controlling, or otherwise dealing in a representative or fiduciary capacity with the property that belongs or belonged to, or that is or was held for the benefit of the taxpayer or the taxpayer's estate. So if you're not the taxpayer, but you might have received something for them, think about it. Have you ever received anything that may be like a T4 or anything like that? So whose property was that? Was that actually yours? Or was it the entity's, therefore putting you, its legal representative, with fiduciary responsibilities to perform? So now they're coming after you to perform the duties for the taxpayer. That's why it's easier to leave him unemployed and you don't have all that paperwork. So we looked at that word individual, and I want to explore that a little deeper because it's really important to be able to establish, is it us or not? Well, it would be really clear if they went individual means a natural person. That would be really clear. But it's fairly ambiguous, even if we don't even apply principles of interpretation. Individual means a person other than a corporation. So whenever you see the word individual in the Income Tax Act, it means all the persons other than that, other than the incorporated company. Okay? Now we look at the word taxpayer. Are we a taxpayer? Does it say taxpayer includes a natural person or what? A taxpayer includes any person. Any person from where? Any person as defined from within the Act, whether or not liable to pay tax. So you start looking at words like this. See, words that end in EE and ER and OR and stuff, they're called neutral words. They could actually mean a natural person. And think about, this is why they had to actually define it within the Act. Because if they did not redefine the word or limit the word of taxpayer, think about it this way. If your kid goes to the store, say they're 9 or 10, they go to the store, they buy a toy, they pay GST on that toy, do they not pay a tax? So would that not just make them a taxpayer? You see, the word taxpayer is so broad that when they wanted to use it, they had to define it to limit it to just mean a person within this Act, whether they're liable to pay tax or not. So when we look at these words person, and like the Principles of Interpretation says, it means this word rolled back up into there. You don't take person and go off and pick up some natural and ordinary meaning. You roll it back within it. Okay, so the only way we really fit into this is, so far, and these guys get paid remuneration or whatever, but we want to explain that a little bit deeper. How many people here have ever received salary and wages? Now, good. At this point, nobody should be willing to put up their hand for anything. This is hard teaching. Okay? Well, what's the normal meaning of salary and wages? Just being paid. You see how they take words we use in our normal language, they give them a meaning, and they talk to us, and we think we know what they're saying. But in here, in this Act, salary and wages means, except in Section 5 6, and 63, the definition of death benefit in the section means, so salary and wages means the income of a taxpayer from an office or employment. That's all salary and wages. These guys all get salary and wages. And all it means is the money that these officers and servants make. That's it. It doesn't mean what you make doing the things you want. Okay? But does not include supervising. So they even exempt a few things that it doesn't have to. Basically, what you're seeing here is this is how the tax system works. You have to be holding an office, either self-employed, or as an officer. See, when you're a servant of the federal government. When you're an officer of an employer who's connected to the federal government. Okay? And you get all salary and wages. Now you go, well, how about my rental income, my investment income, and everything else I make and all the peripherals? How does that get shoved in through the office? Real simple when you understand word magic. One little word. Salary and wages means the income of a taxpayer from an office or employment and includes all fees received for services not rendered in the course of the taxpayer's business. So whatever you're doing here, everything else you make gets funneled through this word fees and then funnels back up through and becomes taxable. That's about it. There is your internal federal income tax system. It's all connected. We'll draw the line here. It stays inside the federal government. You actually have to go into the federal jurisdiction to receive the benefit of CPP, voluntarily represent an officer, to hold an office. Income tax basically is the consideration or partial consideration for holding the office. And when you're inside, they're in control. This is the big monster that has scared us all the living daylights out. But because they're using words that we think we know, and all they did was change all that language. Okay? Now, when you look at it, is this bad? No, if you like the game, play the game. But what if you worked out here? Are you even in their jurisdiction? Do they even have the authority to talk to you or get your books in here? Okay, again, the other course goes into that division of jurisdiction. There's a whole nother layer, but that's it. Almost, you know, it's funny because when you look at the years that this has hurt people in this country and you actually see it for what it is, it's like, that's all it is? You know, to me, it's very anticlimactic. And it may be hard to believe. I mean, that's how simple the truth is, and it may be hard to believe. So you want to look for other proofs of this illusion. Now, here's the simplest form of proof you ever need. This is about as simple as you can get to prove that this Income Tax Act does not and cannot apply to you as a natural person. The most striking evidence is the simple fact that if the Income Tax Act were to directly apply to a natural person for the compensation he received for his benefit for the work he did in his capacity as a natural person, then the Income Tax Act would be in violation of the Canadian Bill of Rights. Period. Because nowhere in any of its 2,452 pages can you find, in prescribed form, any express declaration that the income tax can operate notwithstanding, in spite of the Canadian Bill of Rights. That's all you need to know. Someone says you have to pay income tax, and you know who you are, and you know the Canadian Bill of Rights in Section 2, you say, fine, I'll pay you as much as you want as soon as you show me the section in here that says this thing's allowed to operate, in spite of the Canadian Bill of Rights, basically allowed to infringe on my human rights. That's about as simple as it gets. But our human nature, we have a tendency to complex things, so we need complexity to make us feel better, I guess. So we need to go a little bit deeper and start looking at it. All this stuff here, you know, is it a fact that a natural person isn't in that act? Can we prove that? Well, first thing we need to establish is what is a fact. When you realize there's a difference between a fact and the truth. Okay, I like this as like, why is a green tree green? Because we all agree it is. What color is this leaf here? See? Until we all come to that point of agreement, it's not a fact. A fact is completely different than the truth. Realize, what side of the road do we drive on? We all drive, I know my left from right, so it's a bad example, but we all drive on one side. See, in our country, that's a wrong example, right? That's a fact. But in England, if we went to and say, no, this is a fact. No, it's not. In a fact, they drive on the other side over there. You see, a fact needs a common acceptance of it. So we start looking at what are facts within our legal system, our language and everything. We start looking at the different areas and start looking at rules in a different light. We start seeing rules are good as long as they're designed to enslave us. Rules allow us to live together in harmony a little bit. So here's some rules of English construction. Capitalization. Always capitalize proper nouns refer to specific person, place, or things. That's what we're taught as a rule so we can communicate. So we know, when we all look at this, Art, Don, Bill, Frank, we look at that and guess what? We all just, you know, after years of studying this stuff, we realize those are names. Because what are these without capitalization? Art, something you hang on the wall. Don, something that happens in the morning. Bill, something you throw in the garbage, right? Frank, that's how you talk to CCRA when you understand this stuff. Here it is. Okay? So you start seeing we need rules so we can communicate in a society. Doesn't make them the truth. Truth is a completely different thing. So let's look at some rules for mathematical interpretation, because you've got to understand too is our logic sometimes can override and blind us from the facts. Facts come from a different structure. So let's look at this. Like, we're taught to see if we commingle rules, then we can get a wrong conclusion, because we're taught to read from left to right. Okay? So we do math from left to right. 4 plus 4 is 8 times 4. 4 plus 4 is 8 times 4 is 32. That sounds logical, feels good. We did it right. Okay? But let's break the rules, okay? And let's do it backwards. 4 times 4 is what? 16 plus 4 is 20. So what feels right with this one, right? Because we didn't have to break what we saw as rules. But when we understand principles of mathematical interpretation, we start seeing the importance of following rules. It's called BODMATs, brackets off, division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. We've got to do them in that order. So regardless where it shows up, the rules say you do brackets, then division, then multiplication first. 4 times 4 is 16, plus 4 is 20. So regardless what we think, we need to understand the importance of following the rules. Now the reason I went through that is when we go back into the Income Tax Act or into the principles of interpretation, we can use the principles of interpretation to prove that a natural person is not nor was intended to be in the Income Tax Act. First thing we got to stop at, as we looked at earlier, what is the natural legal meaning of individual? Individual, person under the Canadian Bill of Rights, the right of the individual extends to natural persons.